Okay, this is part 2 of our chapter 1, 2.1 lecture. We just studied frequency distribution tables, or relative frequency distributions or tables. And now we're looking at the next situation, which is a bar graph, which I think you're very familiar with. A bar graph is constructed by labeling each category of data, either the horizontal or vertical axis, and then in the frequency, relative frequency of each category. And then you draw them with rectangles of equal width. And the height represents the frequency or relative frequency. So here's an example of values here. And what we want to do is construct a bar graph, a frequency and a relative frequency bar graph of that. And so if you look carefully, we have the data. I have this data in StatCrunch already here. And this is what it's going to look like. We want to draw a bar plot. We have the summary data. It's already been summarized for us. You can see there. The categories are in the body part, and then frequency is your frequency there, and then you would go ahead and then create it. So there is a bar graph, right? You can see all your body parts on the bottom, and so this is what you would put down in there. And then from here you also then have your frequency, and so this is what you typically know what it looks like. Now if we want a relative frequency distribution, I can turn the type into relative frequency and compute. And then you see the graph looks identical. Only difference is along the side you have your decimal values there. And so then again, the bar graph and the bar graph with the relative frequency look the same. You have, again, the categories along the bottom, and then your either frequency or relative frequency along the side. You can see that's where these values come from. There's 0.4 for back. Again, that came from my type. I want a frequency, and if I switch that, then you see it's a 12 there. And so this is an example of a relative frequency or frequency bar graph there. And so that's what you would put down in your notes. If you need to pause and write that down, you should. But that's what we're looking at there. And so that's what you put there. Now, sometimes you can make a bar graph that says, right here, explain when it's preferable to use horizontal bars versus vertical bars. For bar graph, again, we could have made those side by side or up and down. And again, it's really your choice when how you want to kind of share the information. Many times it just has to do with the size of your labels, how long the words are. And so in there, again, it really just depends on the labels. What do I mean by labels? Like the words back, can. Depends on the labels and the length of the word. So just think about that. On the examples I just showed you, it fits nicely along the bottom. But if this was a long word, you might want them horizontally instead of vertically. And that's it there. On the last one here, the last thing for chapter 2.1 is what we call a pie chart. And so a pie graph, which we did, if you took Math 83, we did that. A pie graph is a circle divided into sectors. Each sector represents a category of data. The area of each sector, each sector is proportional to the frequency of the category. And so just to show you what a pie graph looks like again. And so we can use that same data. Let's try this here. Same data here just to show you what that's going to look like. And so taking this data here, graph, pie chart, I have the summary data here. And so then body part, frequency, and then if we just compute there, you will see the pie chart is another way of looking at it. And it's, again, it's proportional. The size of this is bigger because this is your biggest one, and it should represent 40%. And when you add each piece together, it equals 100%. And then it's important to know that when we're comparing part to whole, like the back compared to everything, is kind of when we want to use a pie chart. So it's like part to whole relationship versus if we did a bar plot, right, which we did earlier. A bar plot right here. Let's see if we can get them both in there. Yeah, we get them both here. A bar chart is really just when you want to compare one to the other. Here is kind of part to the whole. And so there's subtle differences. There's a homework question I asked you kind of to think about the difference between those two. But that's our lecture to finish the second part of 2.1.